Okay, so I'm going to be introducing a new concept called vector embeddings. Now, what does that mean? Well, basically...
Vector! That's me, because I'm committing crimes with both direction and magnitude. Oh yeah!
Okay, not quite that. But without boring you with all the nerdy details, it's essentially a way of converting a chunk of text meaning into a bunch of numbers. Why numbers? Well, because they're really good at portraying the nuances of meaning. For example, if I type the phrase, "Let's eat, Grandma," it means I'm excited to share a nice meal with someone I love. But if I type the phrase, "Let's eat, Grandma," it means I'm a cannibalistic psychopath and my grandma probably should lock her doors.
Hi, Grandma.
Now, if I feed phrase 1 into a vector embedding API, it will spit out a set of numbers that represent that meaning. And if I feed phrase 2 into a vector embedding API, it should spit out a different set of numbers to represent that meaning. Now, whether you want to store a bunch of FAQs like I am for my chatbot, or the contents of a big massive document, or transcripts from your videos, or whatever you want to store, you can store it. And in this video, I'll show you how to convert each chunk of text into numbers so you can then store those numbers into something called a vector database. Don't worry, it's way easier than it sounds. A vector database is super handy because when one of your app's users types in a search phrase or a question to a chatbot or whatever else, you can extract that meaning from the phrase they just typed through the same vectorization process and then feed those numbers into your vector database. And your vector database can then analyze all its contents and spit back all of the most relevant answers you've stored. It's pretty awesome how this all works together, and I've probably bored you enough with how it works technically, but practically, here's why this is a game changer, especially for those who are building AI chatbots like me. Before I got my vector database to send me the top 3 or 5 or 10 or however many you want, most relevant bits of stored information, guess what I was doing? I was sending pretty much all of the frequently asked questions over to OpenAI so that it could have the context it needed to answer my website visitors' questions. And this is okay and honestly worked fine for me, but as I get more and more FAQs and as my knowledge base grows and as I have more and more data I want to train my chatbot on, well, this can kind of get expensive because I'm sending so much information every single time a message gets sent, especially if you're using GPT-4. The pricing for GPT-4 is just a little bit more steep. Now though, instead of sending all my knowledge base over every single time I send an API call, I can receive the message from my user, convert that message into meaning in the form of numbers, and take those numbers, query my vector database for the most likely answers, grab those top answers, and then send only those top answers over to ChatGPT, who can take a look at those answers for context and then compose a perfect response for a fraction of the cost. It's super cool how it all works together. And not only are you saving on cost, but you're also saving on speed. And the coolest part is that in all my testing, I used to think that GPT-3 just wasn't smart enough to do the job correctly. But now, after lots of testing, I'm realizing that narrowing that context down to only what it needs to know before spitting out an answer, guess what? GPT 3.5 is now just as capable as GPT-4 was with my old way of doing things. So yeah, cost savings times 2, which means that you get more margins and your clients get more savings. Oh, and you're probably wondering how much this vector database thing is going to cost you, huh? Well, get ready. It's free. Yep, as of the filming of this video, Pinecone.io has an extremely generous free plan that allows you to scale really far. Yes, eventually, once you're raking in subscriptions, and you'll probably want to upgrade. But for now, enjoy the free tier because it's amazing. And you're probably also wondering how tricky this is all going to be to set up. Well, it's your lucky day because I'm on a mission to democratize tech for non-technical people, and I'm about to show you how incredibly easy it is to set this all up. And before we dive in, you'll want to push pause real quick and do 3 things. Open your bubble.io editor, make sure you have a Pinecone.io account, and go to platform.openai.com and make sure you have a ChatGPT API account. This is the only thing you'll need to pay for. Both Bubble and Pinecone's free plans are totally sufficient for what we're about to do. So let's dive in. Okay, so I'm in my Bubble editor here. Now, this is not a design tutorial, so I went ahead and just built some very basic, ugly designs here. Again, sorry, I know they're ugly. It's not a design tutorial. And if you're not sure how I built these, watch some of my other videos. I show you exactly step-by-step how to go about building these things. It's basically just 3 groups. I've got the train the bot section where we click to add trainings. I got the ask the bot section where we get the answer. And then once we click get the answer, it shows the answer. That's all it is. But I want to show you the workflows and how to actually build this and connect it to your Pinecone database and connect it to your ChatGPT account and all that stuff, right? So the very first thing I want you to do is go ahead and build your interface the way you want it. Again, all you need is 2 buttons. 1 to add training and 2 to get answers. And the add training is just taking in text, and getting an answer is also taking in a line of text, right? So you can grab inputs, or if you wanted to convert text from PDF documents, or if you want to scrape a website and bring that text on over, or whatever you want. But in the end, you'll have text to add to your vector database. And I'm just going to show you a very simplified version so you can get the idea. If you want a more in-depth, robust tutorial, head over to NoCodeAdvantage.com and check out my AI Chatbot Pro course. All right, so the very first thing you want is, again, build your UX, and then go to the plugins section of Bubble and add a plugin and search for AI Unlimited. And that's the plugin that I built to make this a lot easier for you. So let's go ahead and install that and click done. Now, I have a bunch of instructions here. You don't need to read through it all. You're watching this, so you're good to go. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is scroll down here, and you'll see a bunch of fields. This looks more daunting and scary than it is. Really, all you need is 2 API keys. So the first thing you'll want to do is go to pinecone.io. If you don't already have an account, be sure and sign up for one. I do have an account, so I'm going to go ahead and log in. When you have your brand new Pinecone.io account, you'll see something like this. Again, UX changes over time, so if it looks different, just listen to the principles of what I'm saying and not necessarily the exact UX of what I'm saying. But you'll want to create your very first index, and you can give it a name. You can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name this like test index for video. Lame name, I know, but that works. I'm going to say 1536. 1536 is what you need if you're using OpenAI to create your embedding. So be sure to put 1536 there. Cosine is fine. Starter is fine. Again, that's the free plan. They have a very generous free plan. So once you're done with that, you'll hit create index and you are ready to roll. Now you'll want to go over to the indexes tab. It just takes a few moments to initialize. Okay, there it goes. It's ready to roll. Now, the first thing you'll want to do is go to the API keys section. You'll have a couple test keys. You can use those if you want, or you can create a new one. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use one they already gave me, and I'm just going to copy this, and don't you try to steal it, because I'll have deleted this by the time I launch this video, so you won't be able to steal it. But I'm going to copy this and go back here, and all you'll do is literally throw in that into every single field that says Pinecone. Throw that in there. So just paste that into every single field that says Pinecone. Now all we need is one more key from OpenAI, and to get that, you'll go to platform.openai.com. If you don't already have an account, you will need one. Sign up for an account with platform.openai.com. Click the top right and click View API Keys. Now, these are all my test keys I've made, and I'm going to delete some of these later, but you can create a new one, and that's my key. Again, I'm going to delete this later. I'm going to copy this and get out, and now I'm going to come back into my Bubble app and say bearer space and then paste the key. That's all you need. Bearer and space and then paste the key. I'm going to copy that and throw that whole thing here and here and here. And I'm ready. That's all I need to do thanks to this awesome plugin that I built. I'm pretty proud of it. So let's go to the design tab now. And now all we need to do is hook this up. What I'm doing is I'm training the bot on FAQs. So like when someone comes to my website, NoCodeAdvantage.com, and they click here to talk to my chatbot, I've basically trained my chatbot on the questions I get the most often. If you come to my website and ask a question that I haven't yet trained it on, well, I'm going to learn over time, and I'm going to add that to my FAQ section. But for the most part, it's pretty trained with the most common questions. So that's my use case. So if I come back to my Bubble app, that's what I'm doing. I'm saying there's a sample FAQ question, and then the model answer I want the chatbot to mimic, right? But again, for you, there could be so many different use cases. This could be, asking questions about a legal document. This could be maybe you're storing a repository of all your favorite video clips and you're searching for the right one at the right time, and it pulls exactly that clip for you. Or maybe you're creating an app for a tire shop, and you store in your vector database, you store the current inventory of tires, or I don't know, I'm just throwing out ideas, but you could do so many things with this. Again, for my example, I'm just going to do the simple FAQ example. If you would like help on building your own custom AI service, please go to NoCodeAdvantage.com, join the academy. I'd be happy to personally help you. Okay, so let's go here, and all we'll do is we'll right click and we'll say start the workflow. When they click on that button, what do we want to happen? And for me, in my database, I've already created something called an FAQ, and all that has is just the answer and the question and the organization that it pertains to, right? Because my software could host many different organizations, and we don't want to cross wires. We don't want tire shop answers being given to hair salon visitors, right? That would be weird. So that's my FAQ data type. And all we'll do when someone clicks add training, well, we're just going to create a new FAQ. So not only are we creating the FAQ in our own bubble database, but then we will also upsert it into the Pinecone vector database. And I'll show you all that right now. So we're creating an FAQ. Let's add all fields. And the question is just simply whatever they typed right here, right? So let's just highlight this and copy it and come back and say whatever they typed in input questions value. Organization is going to be the current user's organization, and I set that up this way. The user type has a field on it called organization, and that is of type organization, which is a different data type, which just simply has a name. Again, this is a very simple example, but those are my 3 data types in the data tab. Now let's come back to the workflow and say the answer is whatever they type here, right? The model answer that they're hoping the AI will give. So we'll come back here and we will throw that in there and that value. Cool. Now we've created the FAQ in our own database, the text version of that FAQ stored in our own database. Now we want to convert the meaning of that question that we're expecting people to type. We want to convert that meaning into numbers. Remember, vector numbers. So all we'll do is we're going to use an action step from this plugin that I already showed you how to install. We're going to use the get embeddings action step. So if we go to the workflow and I say get embeddings, there it is. We throw that in there. And again, this is just my random placeholder. Let's insert dynamic data and say whatever the result of step 1 is, or whatever its question was, we want that text, right? And not only do we want the text just to make sure it works, there's something called formatted as JSON safe. And basically, if your question has any like quotation marks in it or weird characters that the API doesn't like, that fixes that for you. So we'll format that as JSON safe. Cool, that's all there is to it. Now OpenAI will convert our text question into numbers, 1,536 numbers to be exact. And now that we have numbers, we want to do step 3, which is called upsert. So let's go to the Pinecone console. Let's go to the indexes. And what you'll want is this URL. Click copy on your index. And if I click into it, as you can see, I have 0 vectors stored. That's about to change. So let's go back to our bubble app and let's throw that base URL in there. That's for your Pinecone database. Now, as for the values, these values are just for my test dummy data, right? We don't want that. We want your data that you just converted. So let's go here. We will say the result of step 2's data, first items, embedding. And that's it. Now for the organization ID, well, the reason for this is basically if you have a multi-tenant SaaS, or if you have like multiple users or multiple organizations, like for me, it's an organization. For you, maybe it's just by the user. However you want to set it up or segregate it, right? You don't want to upload the tire shop FAQ into the flower shop's database, right? So that's why we specify exactly what organization we're doing this for, right? So let's go here and insert dynamic data and say, whatever the current users, organizations, unique ID is. And then we want to format that as JSON safe as well. Now the FAQ ID is once we upload these vectors into Pinecone, we want a way to match up the Pinecone results with the bubble results, right? With what we've stored in bubble. And the way we do that is we allow both tables to share a common unique identifier. So whatever I created here has automatically attached to it this unique ID, and we want to attach the very same unique ID to the Pinecone version of that same FAQ, right? So let's insert dynamic data. Let's say the result of step 1's unique ID. And then we want to, I guess, make sure again that that is formatted as JSON safe so the API doesn't have any issues with it. Cool. And then lastly, I guess since we're done here with training the bot, I guess we can just reset these inputs and clear them out so they're empty. So let's just go here and say reset relevant inputs. Cool. We are done with the training side of things. Now let's go down to the ask the bot side of things so we can get an answer. So what do? We right click, start the workflow and say, what do we want to have happen when they click on get answer? Well, we want this input ask a question. I'm going to copy the name of that input so I can use it in here. And again, we're asking a question, but we want to translate that question into 1,536 different numbers so that we can then hit Pinecone with those numbers and say, hey, Pinecone, give me all the FAQs that you're storing whose meaning is related to the meaning I'm querying you with right now, right? So basically we want anything that's relevant to the question that's currently being asked. So let's come back here and we will say get embeddings, again, from OpenAI, and let's insert dynamic data. Let's say whatever they put in input ask a questions value, we want that. And again, we'll JSON safeify that. Next, we'll want to query Pinecone. So find the query action step. And again, that base URL is that same one. Let's go back here and it's just right here. Let's grab that and throw it in there. The vectors are not going to be this static bunch. It's going to be the result of step 1, right? Whatever we just converted through OpenAI's vectorization process, we want that. So let's say the result of step 1's data's first items embedding, and that will give us a list of 1,536 numbers that represent the meaning of whatever they just typed. The organization ID will just simply be the current users, organizations, unique ID, JSON safe, and we're good to go there. Now, this is the number of responses. So how many different relevant FAQs do you want Pinecone to spit back out? I would recommend probably 3 to 5, maybe 10 at the most. Really probably depends on your use case. The more you get back, the more money you're going to spend per question, but the more accurate your answers will probably be. And the less you put here, the less you're going to spend per question, but you do kind of run the risk of maybe omitting some context that you would like ChatGPT to have. So again, I kind of like to do 5. I think that's a pretty good default. You could do 3 if you want to save a little more money, but whatever you think there, I'll stick with 5 for now, and we're good to go on step 2. Now, step 3 is, again, we're going back to OpenAI. We're going back to ChatGPT and saying, hey, ChatGPT, here's some context. And here's what the user just asked. Go ahead and answer the question that the user just asked based on that context, right? So to do that, we want to use get answer. OpenAI get answer. GPT 3.5 is fine for this. Again, I used to think this wasn't sufficient, but now that we're doing this cool vectorization process, I do think it's sufficient for most use cases. Temperature will kind of determine how you want OpenAI to respond. Higher values will make your output more random, and lower values it's between 0 and 1, and lower values will make your output more focused and deterministic. 0.5 is fine for me for now. Initial prompt, sure, we'll let the chatbot be sarcastic chatbot named Wilbur. That'll work, I guess, for this video. And then as for the context and prompt, what I'm going to do is I kind of hate typing in this one line input when I'm trying to work with multiple lines. So just a little hack I'll show you is rather than having to type it out like this on a single line, I can just insert dynamic data and say arbitrary text, and that gives me multiple lines of an input, and it's just a little bit easier from my perspective. So I'm going to paste that back in there, and I'm going to get rid of these quotation marks, and I'm going to say, okay, given the below context, please answer the following prompt. Context, and then we don't want blah, 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 so I'm going to replace that with the context that Pinecone just gave me. How do I do that? Well, the way that Pinecone responds back to my query is it will shoot me back a list of the unique identifiers, the unique IDs of these, the FAQs. So again, that's why it's important that we store these FAQs both in our Bubble database and in our Pinecone database so that we can utilize them in both places, right? So let's say I'm going to do a search in my Bubble database for FAQs. If I want, I can constrain it down to like the organization, only the current user's organization or whatever. It doesn't really matter too much, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the unique ID of these FAQs. So I'm searching for all FAQs in my Bubble database whose unique ID is in a list that Pinecone gives me, right? I only want the ones whose unique ID is in the list of relevant FAQs that Pinecone gives me back, right? So let's say result of step 2's matches each item's ID. That tells Bubble to only get the FAQs that Pinecone thinks are relevant. I'm gonna close that up. And then Bubble's not sure how to spit that out as text for ChatGPT, right? So what I'm going to say is format all that as text. And I'm simply going to say question, colon, blah, 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 answer, colon, blah, blah, blah. And for each and every FAQ, whether you said 3 or 5 or 10 that you wanted, right? We're going to do this. We're going to say question, answer, comma, question, answer, comma, question, answer, comma. And we're going to give all that context to ChatGPT so it can think through it and then provide a relevant answer. So let's go back to the question underline, and we'll insert dynamic data and say whatever this FAQ's question is. And then for the answer, same thing, whatever this FAQ's answer is, and close that up. And now we've got that nicely formatted as text to send off to ChatGPT. Awesome. Now the prompt that we're actually asking is not what are the 3 keywords. It's let's insert dynamic data, and it's whatever they typed, right? So let's go back to design tab. Whatever they typed in this input, ask a question. So we go back to the workflow and say, whatever they typed in input, ask a questions value is what we want for our prompt. Now we can close that up and format that as JSON safe, and we are ready to roll. Well, almost. I guess once we get the answer, we want to actually display that answer, right? So this is by default not visible and collapsed, right? It's by default, it's not even there. But we want to show it because we have an answer. So we'll say show group answer. And then if we come back here, what I have is group answer is of type text, but the data source is empty by default because it doesn't have an answer by default. But once they click this get answer button, it will have an answer. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our answer from ChatGPT that we got in this workflow, and we're going to display it in this group right here. So we're going to display it, and then this parent group's text, it's just going to inherit that data. So if we go back to the workflow, we say display data in a group or a pop-up. What data are we displaying? Whatever answer we just got from step 3, remember? So we'll say the result of step 3's choices, first items, message content is what we want to display. And we are ready to roll. That's all there is to it, my friends. Let's give this a test. I'm going to hit preview real fast, and I'm going to get rid of the debug mode real fast so we could just see how it will look in the actual run mode of the app. Now, the first thing before I test real fast is I'm not logged in to my app. And because in the workflow, remember when we're getting the answer, we're getting it based on when we did the search for FAQs, we're basing it on the current user's organization. And if I'm not logged in, then it won't know what organization I'm talking about, right? So if we go to the data tab real quick, I made a little test organization called Bob's Tire Shop, and I'm going to go to all users. And there I am. And my organization is that one test, Bob's Tire Shop. If you click run as in Bubble, that automatically logs me in. So now I'm a logged in user and it should work well. But let's go ahead and train the bot on a sample question. So maybe, I don't know, I'm trying to think of just a simple question that Google wouldn't know and the internet wouldn't know and only we know it. What is it? I don't know. We can just say like, what are the 3 special keywords or something like that? And we can say banana, turkey, and Ravenclaw. I don't know. I'm just, again, throwing out random stuff, but let's go ahead and train the chatbot on those 3 keywords, right? So what it's doing is it's converting that question, what are the 3 special keywords, into 1,536 numbers, and then it's sending those numbers into our Pinecone database to be stored for later. Well, guess what? Now is later. So I'm going to go ahead and say, give me the 3 keywords. I'm purposely phrasing this a little bit different than I did up here, just so that I can show you how cool this is, because even though I'm phrasing it differently, it should be able to extract the meaning of what I'm saying, and the meaning, those numbers, the 1,536 numbers of this phrase should be somewhat similar to what I put for that phrase, because they really mean the same thing, right? So let's go ahead and ask and see if it works. Now I'm getting the answer. Again, it's converting that into 1,536 numbers, and it's asking Pinecone, hey Pinecone, what have you been trained on that's similar to that? And then Pinecone is giving me the unique idea of what I've been trained on, and then I'm sending that back to ChatGPT, and oh, sure, the 3 special keywords are banana, turkey, and Ravenclaw, because nothing says special like a fruit, a bird, and Hogwarts house, right? Nice. All right, so we've got ourselves a trained robot. And again, this is a very simple tutorial, but the implications of this are huge. There are so many app ideas you can do with this. So I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for watching. All right, now you have the power of vector database embeddings in your NoCode app, and you didn't have to code a single line. I hope this was helpful for you. I'll see you in the next video.